What if someone knocked on your door at midnight and it wasn't who you expected? Good evening, the Phantom House community. You enjoy short stories, episodes with several paranormal stories, and also episodes where a single long narrative extends throughout the entire program. Today, we have one sent to us by Aurora M, one of the most disturbing we've received this year. Pay attention. This is the chronicle of a house that seemed to breathe on its own, or perhaps was inhabited by something no one could name. Ready? Turn off the lights and allow the story to envelop you. When I was a child, I spent weekends at my aunt and uncle's house because I loved being with my older cousins. It was routine for them to pick me up from school on Fridays and stay with me until Sunday. Their home was my second refuge. They bought me things. We played until late, and I felt cared for. I was 10 years old. My cousin Valeria was 14, Carla 16, and my oldest cousin, Mateo, 20. Mateo hardly ever lived there. He worked away and returned only on weekends. I remember that weekend in 2010 with strange clarity, as if it had happened just a few days ago. The family had recently moved into a spacious 2-story house with large windows. Upstairs were my aunt and uncle's bedrooms, a TV room, and the girls' rooms. Downstairs were 2 more rooms, Mateo's and another converted into a small studio with drums and a guitar. He wasn't a professional musician, but he played with gusto and was an excellent drummer. That afternoon, my aunt and uncle left town on business and left Mateo in charge of the house. There were still moving boxes in the garage, so my cousins started unpacking and organizing. I tried to help, although they didn't ask me for anything because they always made sure I was comfortable. As evening fell, already tired and hungry, Mateo suggested ordering tacos instead of cooking. Valeria decided to stay because she wanted to take a long bath. The house had a remote control to lock the gate and secure everything. Although everyone had keys, that remote was useful when they were in a hurry. My cousins agreed not to take the keys to avoid losing them and left Valeria inside with the instruction to lock the house with the remote and let us in when we returned. It took us about 30 minutes. When we returned, Carla texted her to let us in. 5 minutes passed without a reply, and Carla's anxiety began to show. Maybe she's still in the shower, Mateo said, looking at the balcony of the master bedroom where Valeria had said she was going to shower. From where we were standing outside, we could see that balcony. The doors were glass, and vertical blinds covered the window. If anyone looked out, we'd see the whole house. We waited to see her appear behind the glass. Carla called her again, and then the blinds moved. Valeria appeared, one hand holding the blinds and the other holding her cell phone. Her hair was wet, and she was wearing a towel around her body. Her voice sounded annoyed when she asked us to open the door. But something in her gesture unsettled me. The argument over the phone escalated. We wanted to go in for dinner, and she said she couldn't find the remote. Suddenly, Carla stopped talking. Her face went from angry to distressed in seconds. With the phone still pressed to her ear, she asked in a trembling voice who was with Valeria. Mateo and I turned toward the balcony. Next to Valeria, there was a tall, dark figure standing by the window. The figure opened the blinds with one hand and waved slowly with the other, waving its arms from side to side. A shiver ran down my spine. Valeria shook her head and assured us she was alone, begging us not to joke around. Mateo, without thinking, began banging desperately on the gate as if he wanted to get in immediately. I saw Valeria press her forehead against the glass, close her eyes, and burst into tears. She remained rigid, as if petrified. Carla, her voice breaking, tried to shout to her that the figure was to her right. The silhouette, unhurriedly, closed the blinds, and disappeared. Valeria turned her head and hid it as well. The scene left us speechless with terror. Mateo climbed the gate, trying to reach the balcony. The house alarm started to sound and stopped after a few seconds. Immediately, the gate opened and we were admitted. We entered trembling. Carla took our hands and we approached the front door, which she opened slowly with her trembling hand. "Stay here," she asked me as I went out to look for Valeria with Mateo. From the balcony, Mateo told us in a strained voice that everything was fine and that we should come in. They left us in the living room. They had to check every corner of the house to rule out intruders. They asked us not to move and divided themselves into the rooms. Dinner was silent and tense. Valeria didn't speak all night. Carla feigned normalcy to calm me down. That family had experienced strange episodes before. Objects moving, shadows crossing, noises in the night. For them, this was almost everyday occurrences, although always within certain limits. What we had seen on the balcony was beyond anything we had ever seen before. They didn't know if it had followed them from their previous house, or if it had inhabited the new one. They decided not to tell us everything because they wanted to protect me from fears they considered dangerous for a child. That night, they inflated a mattress on the floor in front of Valeria's bed so I could sleep close. We covered ourselves up, and Valeria gently took my hand. "Don't let go of me," she said softly, trying to calm herself as much as protect me. I stared at the ceiling and couldn't get the image of the figure on the balcony out of my mind. The sadness of missing my mother overwhelmed me, and I began to cry quietly, pretending to be asleep so as not to alarm them. 3 soft knocks on the door brought me out of that bubble. Valeria put her finger to her lips to ask for silence and went to open it. Carla came in with a blanket and a pillow. She said she wasn't feeling reassured and would prefer to sleep with us. We made room on the mattress and settled back in. Minutes later, the door handle began to move slowly, as if someone were trying to open it without forcing it. Valeria squeezed my hand. From the other side, we heard a female voice whispering to let her in. It was a low, soft tone that echoed the words Carla had used when she came in. Our skin prickled. 3 more knocks, this time harsher and more desperate, resonated on the wood. The footsteps going up and down the stairs alerted us again. There was a lot of movement, like someone running through the house. Suddenly, a thick silence fell. The voice returned, but this time it sounded like 2 voices at the same time, one deep and the other higher, as if 2 women were speaking at once from under the door. Valeria couldn't stop her tears. We tried to protect each other and hold our breath. Desperate knocks shook the door. Mateo shouted that it was him, that we were opening it, and he pleaded with a broken voice. The next morning, the sunlight was a relief. It was 9 o'clock. Valeria and Carla were asleep. Mateo wasn't in the room. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare, but the tension that still hung in the house made me certain that it had happened. I went down to the dining room, and the table was set for breakfast. My aunt was moving around the kitchen in a hushed voice, as if she wanted to finish quickly. I asked about Mateo, and he said he'd gone off to do some things and would be back later. No one mentioned the night's events, and everyone acted with a forced calm. That evening, we went to drop Carla off at a meeting, and Valeria's friend, Luna, was staying over. That evening, we sat in our pajamas watching a movie with the lights off, only the screen illuminating the room. At one point, the percussion on the soundtrack didn't fit. The drums sounded offbeat, as if someone else was playing the tape. Valeria got up and looked out into the hallway. A few seconds later, a bark was heard in the backyard. a sound identical to that of Nala, the family dog who had died weeks earlier. Luna tried to rationalize it by saying it was a stray dog, but Valeria insisted it was Nala. The patio door opened slowly and creakingly. Dishes shattered in the kitchen with a crash that made us scream. We froze. From the back of the house, a short, wide shadow emerged and slid under the dining room. It was clumsy, but massive. 2 protuberances on its head resembled sharp, curved horns, and its feet resembled hooves. The chairs shifted, and the table shook. My uncle came in with a bat and turned on all the lights, looking under the table. There was no figure, only the mess and the overturned chairs. They took us out of the house, and the police arrived shortly after to search, although they found no intruders. That night, we were put to bed in Valeria's room with a lit lamp. No one wanted to sleep in the dark. At 11, something else happened. A deep male voice inside the room said this would end if we didn't talk about it. The lamp went out without explanation, and the bed we were sleeping in moved as if something heavy was shaking underneath. The girl screamed, the blankets fell, and an ancient panic took hold of me. They took us out of the house, and we spent the night outside trying to regain our pulse. Eventually, the family decided to move again. They thought the house was the source of their troubles, although I always suspected it traveled with them, like a shadow attached to family history. Mateo died years later, at a young age. The events faded as everyone went their separate ways, but the mark remained. No one spoke about it out loud. It was one of those episodes people recall in whispers and avoid making public. Over the years, I became reserved. What happened to me that week left its mark. I learned not to express my fear. I bottled it up, rationalized it, and worked on it in therapy. I became a person who plans escape routes and assesses risks with a calmness that sometimes frightens others. I've read other accounts and spoken with those who say they felt similar presences, but many questions remain unanswered. What was the figure on the balcony? How did it mimic familiar voices? How could something move with such force that no one could see up close? Over the years, I've learned to live with uncertainty without drama. I don't intend to turn this into a spectacle. It's the truth of a girl who grew up looking over her shoulder. Sometimes I wonder if speaking out now serves to heal cycles or only reopen wounds. I've spoken with people who claimed to have felt presences, and I've read other accounts, yet many questions remain. Sharing it both comforts and frightens me. But today I decided to tell it because keeping quiet hasn't solved anything. I hope my testimony helps others and that memory loses its power to hurt. Thank you so much for listening to this confession. Whether you believe what I say or not is up to you. This is my story, and today I share it with you on the Phantom House. Have a good night, community.